The intense transformational fires of spiritual awakening are, absolutely necessary.
Hmm.
But left entirely unchecked, they will inevitably consume everything they touch.
Right, exactly.
For any soul to actually evolve, that fierce, blinding heat really has to be cooled and anchored. It has to be transformed into a profound, absolute stillness to build a lasting foundation in the universe.
Which means stepping out of that chaotic heat.
Exactly. So push open the heavy wooden door of Café Karma. The frantic noise of the outside world instantly drops away.
Yeah, you just feel it fade.
You notice the grounding scent of old, leather-bound books stacked on the tables, the slow, rhythmic steam rising from a cup of herbal tea, and while that distinct sensation of time stretching out, giving you the space to finally breathe.
But our mission today is to sit in this timeless space and decode the ancient blueprints of a truly profound Vedic astrology nakshatra.
Right, Uttara Bhadrapada.
Yes. Drawing strictly from classical texts and psychological astrology, we're doing a deep dive into the celestial and archetypal level of this star.
To understand exactly how it bridges the deepest, most hidden mysteries of the universe with, grounded earthly reality.
To understand the mechanics of Uttara Bhadrapada, we really have to slow our minds and examine the forces that take raw, chaotic energy and give it a structure.
A structure capable of sustaining life, right?
Mhm.
Like cosmic architecture.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Cosmic architecture. So let's start with the physical location of this architecture. In the zodiac, Uttara Bhadrapada spans from 3 degrees and 20 minutes to 16 degrees and 40 minutes in the sign of Pisces.
And astronomically, it's associated with the stars Iamma Pegasi and Alpha Andromedae.
Right. And the ancient translations of its name give us our first real clue about its function. I mean, it translates to the latter one with lucky feet or the beautiful left foot.
And sometimes posterior shelter.
Yeah, posterior shelter. Because visually, this star forms the latter half of the square of Pegasus.
It completes the celestial shape that was started by its predecessor, the star Purva Bhadrapada. So look at the architecture of a literal house to understand this dynamic. The previous star, Purva Bhadrapada, well, it acts as the roaring, untamed fire built in the center of a plot of land.
It clears the brush, provides raw heat.
Yeah, exactly. But you can't live in a wild bonfire. Uttara Bhadrapada acts as the sturdy, heavy stone walls and the thick roof built around it.
It's that posterior shelter.
Right. It captures a dangerous, wild blaze and turns it into a warm, sustainable, and protective hearth.
And that transition from the front of that celestial square to the back represents a massive evolutionary shift for the human psyche. The untamed fire destroys illusion.
But the psyche requires a hearth to actually process that destruction.
Exactly. This is where the concept of the lucky feet or the beautiful left foot comes into play.
Wait, so lucky feet doesn't mean just like stumbling into good fortune?
No, not at all. Not by pure chance. Think of the difference between a panicked person running blindly out of a burning building and a highly trained firefighter entering that same building.
Oh, okay. The firefighter is taking deliberate steps.
Exactly. Measured, heavily grounded steps. Their feet appear lucky because they don't trip, but that stability is born from discipline.
It's the cooling of impulsive heat into purposeful movement.
Right. The individual is no longer running wildly from their karma. They know exactly where they are stepping.
And that deliberate pacing leads directly into the ancient symbols assigned to this star, which, well, they carry a significant amount of psychological weight.
They really do.
Mm.
The primary symbol for Uttara Bhadrapada is the 2 rear legs of a funeral cot or a bed.
And the secondary symbol is the 2-headed man, or twins.
Right.
Now, I need to reframe this primary symbol immediately, because for you, listening right now, the imagery of a funeral cot likely triggers a really morbid, heavy, or frightening tone.
Yeah, people often misinterpret that.
Exactly. But look at the biological mechanics of a marathon. When you run a grueling marathon, your muscle fibers literally tear.
They sustain microdamage from the relentless effort.
Right. And those muscles do not rebuild while you're still running. They only repair themselves during deep, motionless, almost paralytic sleep.
So the funeral cot isn't about physical death.
No. It represents the biological and spiritual necessity of complete repair. Imagine this marathon hasn't just spanned a few hours, but multiple lifetimes of striving, fighting, and evolving.
Wow. Right, so the cot signifies the transition out of the race.
Exactly. It is the securing of profound, earned rest.
And that rest is the psychological death of illusion. I mean, it's the end of an exhausting cycle of purely material attachment.
You've run the marathon of ego-driven desires.
Right, and now the soul requires the absolute stillness of the cot to process the journey. But, standing still after a lifetime of running brings its own psychological tension.
Because of the duality.
Exactly, which is perfectly illustrated by the secondary symbol, the two-headed man. One face looks backward, acknowledging and honoring the heavy duties, the unresolved karma, and the attachments of the material world.
While the other face looks forward.
Yes, gazing directly into the vast spiritual unknown of the universe. It is the ultimate bridging of two opposing realities.
Wait, I need to pause on the mechanics of that duality. Because how does a person actually live with two heads?
It's definitely a challenge.
I mean, if you're simultaneously aware of both realms, how do you care about paying your mortgage, navigating office politics, or raising your kids, while simultaneously holding the profound realization that the material world is fundamentally a temporary spiritual illusion?
That kind of cognitive dissonance would snap a normal mind in half.
Yeah, it seems like an impossible state to maintain.
Well, a normal mind would snap under that pressure. And that is exactly why the ancients assigned a very specific psychological anchor to this star to prevent the psyche from fracturing.
Which brings us to the deities that govern Uttara Bhadrapada.
Right. The primary deity is Ahirbudhnya, known as the serpent of the deep sea.
An auspicious serpent, right?
Yes, representing hidden kundalini power, fertility, and a silent, immovable guardianship at the very root of the unconscious mind.
Okay, but I'm looking at the secondary deity, and the cognitive dissonance appears again. The secondary deity is the goddess Lakshmi.
Right, the goddess of wealth.
Yeah. She bestows immense prosperity, grace, luxury, and often makes the native of this star a literal gem of the family. So you're putting a deep-sea serpent, which, well, in the West we view as a terrifying kraken or leviathan of destruction.
Right, a monster.
Exactly. You're putting that in the exact same psychological space as the radiant goddess of wealth. One dwells in the dark, crushing depths, and the other wears jewels in the light.
It's a striking contrast.
How do a dark water dragon and a prosperity goddess work together to stabilize the mind?
Well, by completely discarding the Western trope of the dragon as a hoarding, destructive monster. Ahirbudhnya is not a predator in this context.
He's the guardian.
Right. He is the structural integrity of the deep mind. If we strip away the mystical jargon surrounding the word kundalini, it's essentially the dormant, coiled potential of human consciousness sitting at the base of our nervous system.
And if you pull up that hidden primal energy without strict boundaries, you get psychological chaos.
Exactly. So Ahirbudhnya acts as the immense, silent strength required to hold that energy and the human psyche together under pressure.
And then goddess Lakshmi comes in.
Yes. Look at her. She represents material and spiritual wealth. But fragile wealth, wealth built on fleeting trends, superficial charm or pure luck, is easily destroyed.
It doesn't last.
Right. Lakshmi's prosperity can only truly blossom and remain secure against the chaos of the world when it's anchored by the formidable hidden strength of the deep-sea serpent.
So it's wealth protected by profound wisdom.
Exactly. The deep-sea guardian ensures the prosperity is never frivolous. It is deeply rooted in the unconscious and eternally protected.
So the wealth isn't just lying out in the open to be squandered. It's anchored at the bottom of the ocean.
Precisely.
And this combination of deep-sea wisdom and protected prosperity generates a very specific cosmic power. It's referred to in the text as a Shakti.
Right, the Varshodyamana Shakti.
Yeah, Uttara Bhadrapada possesses the Varshodyamana Shakti, which is defined as the power to bring the cosmic rain.
The heavens generate this rain, the earth and the plants receive it, and the resulting mechanism provides spiritual nourishment and stabilization for the three worlds.
Picture the tension of a heavy industrial pressure valve. The intense heat of the previous star, the untamed fire, caused massive evaporation.
Drawing all the moisture up into the sky.
Right, creating a sweltering drought and building immense atmospheric pressure. Uttara Bhadrapada is the precise moment that valve finally releases.
It's that cooling, life-giving rain that drops down.
Exactly. It breaks the fever of the heat wave and allows the scorched soil to actually absorb nutrients again.
It's, a vital mechanism of cosmic ecology. The previous energies in the zodiacal cycle are dedicated to dismantling, breaking down, and just burning away what no longer serves the individual.
But a universe cannot sustain itself on perpetual destruction.
Right. The cosmic rain of the Varshodyamana Shakti does not merely extinguish the fire, it waters the seeds of whatever is meant to grow next.
When the texts speak of this rain washing away hurts and confusions, we have to ground that in psychological reality.
Yes, this washing away is the psychological process of radical acceptance.
It's the conscious shedding of exhausting ego attachments after a period of intense burnout.
Right? The individual stops fighting the fire and allows the rain to cool the soil of their mind, providing the deep spiritual nourishment required to rebuild.
So we have this cooling cosmic rain, this deep sea guardian, and this profound, muscular rest of the funeral cot. Let's look at the technical blueprint that actually manifests this energy into a human personality.
Right, the planetary rules.
Yeah, the planetary ruler of this star is Saturn, which enforces discipline, strict restraint, and incredible endurance.
And the sign ruler is Jupiter, because we are in Pisces.
Right, and Jupiter provides Brahminic or priestly wisdom, benevolence, and expansiveness.
The animal symbol assigned here is the female cow, representing pure, selfless nourishment.
And finally, the primary motivation, the driving force behind all of this is kama, which translates to desire. Okay, but I'm looking at this blueprint and seeing opposing forces that really shouldn't fit together. I mean, we have a primary motivation of kama, desire,
Right.
but it's locked down by the strict, heavy discipline of Saturn and symbolized by the entirely selfless, giving nature of a cow.
It seems contradictory.
Yeah. How does a personality blueprint driven by desire function when it's constantly restricted by Saturn and expected to be selfless?
Well, it functions brilliantly when you understand how these forces synthesize rather than fight. The desire, the kama, in this specific architecture is not selfish hedonism.
It's not about personal pleasure.
No, not an erratic craving for personal pleasure. Driven by the expansive wisdom of Jupiter, this is a profound, elevated desire to protect, to nourish, and to stabilize one's family, lineage, or community.
Oh, I see.
But desire alone, even the most noble desire, will drain a person dry if it lacks a vehicle. Saturn provides that vehicle.
Saturn enforces the strict physical boundaries.
Exactly. The boundaries, the endurance, and the unwavering discipline required to actually manifest that protection in the real world without collapsing.
Look at the biological reality of the female cow. A cow consumes tough, fibrous, difficult to digest grass.
Representing Saturnian hardship.
Right. And it processes that heavy burden through immense internal effort to produce rich, sustaining milk.
Which represents Jupiterian benevolence and Lakshmi's wealth.
So Saturn provides the structural how, while Jupiter provides the philosophical why.
Exactly. Which brings us to how this architecture operates in daily life, through the higher potential versus the shadow expression.
Because these cosmic blueprints are not deterministic fates, they're psychological tendencies that we actively navigate.
Right. At its highest potential, Uttara Bhadrapada is known as the warrior star. But the fire here is entirely restrained.
The ultimate archetype is the warrior priest.
Yes, the quiet, protective guardian of the community.
This is the person who willingly and silently endures immense pain or heavy burdens, not for personal glory, but for a noble cause, or to shield their lineage.
They are the stone walls built around the hearth fire.
But we really must examine the shadow. I mean, what actually happens to this individual when that heavy Saturnian discipline fails?
Well, when the structure of Saturn weakens, when the individual loses their discipline and their boundaries, that vast deep-sea nature of Ahirbudhnya becomes a significant liability.
Without the rigid container of Saturn, those deep waters of the unconscious become murky.
Exactly. The natural tendency to explore hidden depths warps into cunning behavior, secrecy, and a penchant for malicious gossip.
And furthermore, without the deliberate forward motion of those lucky feet, the stillness of the deep sea turns into emotional paralysis.
Or sheer laziness. The driving force of kama is still active, but instead of being channeled into the selfless protection of others, it twists into a desperate desire to escape the crushing burden of responsibility.
The native may sink too far into their own unconscious waters.
Right, seeking refuge in deep-sea addictions to numb the pain of the world, rather than standing as the warrior priest who is capable of enduring it.
Think about the dynamics in your own life right now. Where are you currently using your deepest, most hidden strengths to protect, nourish, and stabilize your foundation?
Where are you acting as the quiet warrior priest for your community, processing the heavy burdens to produce something sustaining?
Right. And conversely, where might you be using those exact same deep waters to hide, to gossip, or to escape from your responsibilities through addiction when the weight simply feels too heavy?
It is the exact same cosmic water. The difference lies entirely in the Saturnian discipline you apply to it.
The shadow only emerges when purposeful movement ceases.
And the individual surrenders to the depths rather than navigating them. The cosmic rain must be channeled, and the structural integrity of the psyche must be maintained.
Well, as our time in Café Karma gently draws to a close today, the steam settling over our cups, we've navigated the dense cosmic architecture of this star.
We've explored the structural stone walls it builds around the soul's untamed fire.
And the profound muscular rest it offers after lifetimes of striving. As you step back out into the noise of the world, I leave you with this thought to mull over.
Yeah.
If you are that two-headed man standing at the very edge of transition, with your lucky feet planted squarely between the material duties of your past and the vast spiritual potential of your future, which foot is currently bearing the actual weight of your life?
The cosmic rain we analyze today, that nourishing, stabilizing force, it eventually has to hit the ground. And in our next deep dive into these ancient sources, we will explore exactly how these immense celestial forces manifest in earthly, daily life, shaping the complex human behaviors and psychological traits of the people walking right beside you.